Okay, I'm going to show you how to trace around an image using Photopea. Photopea is an online editor, which means that you're working online, not on an app on your Chromebook. So if you type in Photopea into your web browser, click on the online editor, and you'll get a window like this. If you go to File, New, and we're going to choose a new project. We're going to go not on a social preset, we're going to go on a print preset and choose A3. And then if we just make it a square by choosing the same number that's here on the height, 297, and then 300 dots per inch, white background, create. Okay, and then you'll get a square image that's the size of an A3 page in real life, and that's a good size to work on when you're drawing. To get then your image that you're working with, File, Open, and you'll be able to find your file either in your drive or on Recent. Okay, so I already have this open as it takes time to load up. So here's my image and here's my new project. So I'm going to now copy this image, select all, edit, copy, or Control C, go back to this one. Okay, so we're back on this one, and then we'll do edit, paste, which is Control V for the shortcut. And you'll see that my image now appears in here. It's a bit large, so holding down the Shift key, I'm going to just shrink the size of it to fit the space, and if you go towards the center and click and drag, you'll be able to move it. Okay, so I'm going to click the tick and say yes to that. Now we need to see the layers of this. So I'm going to go to Window, Layers, and you'll see that this image has got two layers, a background layer and the photographic layer. I am going to add a layer on top by clicking this button here. If you hover over any button, it will tell you what it's going to do. It's like a piece of paper with a folded edge. So I've put a layer on top of this photographic layer. That's just see-through, so you can't see anything's happened, but it's definitely there. So now I'll click on the layer with the image on it, and I'm just going to reduce the opacity of it so that I'll be able to see my drawing on top. Now I'm working on layer 2, and I'm going to do my drawing on here. It's essentially going to trace the image. So I need to look for the pencil tool. It's not actually showing on the tools at the side, it's hiding behind the brush tool. So you'll notice there's a little corner in here, that means there's other tools behind. So if you click on the tool, you should be able to then see the other tools that are hiding behind it. So I'm on the pencil, these are the pencil tool controls. So it's going to be 15 points in size. That's a bit big. I'm just going to delete that and change it to 9. And I'm going to make sure that it's a hard pencil, so it doesn't have a fuzzy edge, it's got a really hard edge, and I'm going to make sure that it's drawing in black. So at the minute I've got black at the background and pink as the foreground colour. It will draw with the foreground colour, so I'm just going to click this arrow to switch them over so that I'm drawing with a black line. So I'm going to need to zoom in to be able to draw this easily. So I'm going to do Control plus with the keyboard and hold down the space bar. Cursor turns into a hand, and then if you click and drag, you can move around the picture. Okay, so to draw, we're going to click first of all, and then hold down Shift, let go of the clicker, and then just click to the next point that you want to join that line to. So I'm keeping Shift held down, and I'm creating an outline of this shape just by clicking at intervals where it turns, and it will just draw a straight line between those 2 points. So you need to make sure that you're clicking in the right place. Obviously if I click down here, it does a line that I don't want to do. So if you don't want a line, you can just go back on history and just click back one event. Okay, so I'm going to have to put it back to join on, click, hold down shift, and then continue with the drawing. So I would do this all the way around the entire object. It's very important because we're going to fill this in digitally. It's very important that we make sure the line is totally joined at the end. If there was to be a gap over here between the line that joins to it, then when you fill with colour it will bleed into the background. Okay, so this is the simple way to trace your object. I'm just going to show you on layers. So if I go to window and layers, I'm just going to show you that if I hide the photographic layer, you can see that I will just be left with an outline over the top. So you must make sure you save your work at the end once you've finished drawing it all, otherwise it will be lost. As soon as you close this tab down, the internet goes off and nothing is saved. So you must make sure you say File, Save as PSD. That means it will save it as a Photoshop document, and it will be saved in all those layers. So at the bottom it's asking me to give it a name, so I'm going to call it Traced Drawing and say Save. If you have some sections that are round, it's much easier to try and use a shape tool to capture those. So if you get the ellipse tool, which might be hiding behind the rectangle, or it could be showing, make sure there's no fill, go on no fill, and you need to have this set to 9 so that your shape, your line is still 9, the size of 9, the same as the other lines. Go to no fill, choose fill with colour, and make sure you choose black. I'm going to have a stroke of 9. So we're going to make the stroke is the size of the line. Okay, so it takes some skill sort of getting used to where to put this shape. So let's try to put it around here. That's a pretty good shape. And then if we go on to Windows Show Layers, you'll see that the shape went onto this layer, a separate layer. So we're just going to right click and say rasterize. So now I've got that circular shape. Every time you add a shape, it will go on another layer. So on the layers, once you've got those showing, if you hold down Control, you can select 2 layers and then right click and say merge layers, and then they'll become one layer so that you can have them on the same layer. So if you do end up with lots of layers, you will need to merge them together. So we'll do that again. Make sure it's on no fill with a stroke of 9 pixels, because that's how big all your other lines are, and it just takes some time to work out where to put it. If you do draw the right shape and it's sort of in the wrong place, you can use the move tool and use the cursor keys to move it to a space that you want it to be in, and then you can say rasterize, which turns it into a solid shape. You might have some shapes that overlap and you need to remove areas of some shapes. So I've just drawn this large blue ellipse. I'm just going to rasterize it by right clicking on the layer, and then I'm going to select, using the round selection tool, I'm going to select the part that I don't want that intersects and overlaps with this one, and then I'll just press backspace to delete it. So I've got rid of the line that I didn't need. Also a way to transform a shape. So I've just drawn this blue one here. It's not quite the right size, so I can go to Edit, Free Transform. This gives me points where I can change and stretch and kind of move things. So I could drag that across, drag this across, and then it's the right shape. And I just simply click the tick to say yes, I agree to that. So I want you to imagine I've finished drawing the whole thing. What you would then do is remove the photographic layer, Just check that all your lines are there. When you hide the photographic layer, it might become more obvious which bits are missing. So bring it back to help you finish it off. And this is why, for this next stage, it's really important to have all your lines joining. So if I do Control Plus, in fact, probably I should have drawn a section that isn't joined. I might just do that right now. I'm going to fill one of these circles in first. So the fill bucket is behind the gradient tool unless it's showing already. So if you click on this tool and get the paint bucket instead, the paint bucket will fill with whatever colour is in the foreground. So I'm just going to switch those over and use that pink. So if I go ahead and click in this area, it will just fill what's inside that circle. So that was a contained circle, and so it was able to easily understand which section I wanted to fill in. Let me just show you what happens when you have lines that don't meet. Okay, so I've clicked, and as you can see, it's filled in absolutely everything because of this gap. So it's as if the paint spills through the areas. So this must mean that there's some kind of gap somewhere in this also, because it's gone into there. So it's really important that your lines meet everywhere. So to select different colours, and then to change the colour, simply click here, choose from the colours that are here. You can click on here, it's showing you what colour it's going to pick when you go into this section, and then just say OK, and then I can fill using that colour now. Okay, so you can fill the whole thing with all kinds of different colours, but there must be some gap here, because when I click on here, I think it also will go through. It has. So what you have to do is then do a Control Plus and inspect. So hold down the space bar and click and drag to see if you can find where the gap is, because we don't want a gap there. So you're just moving around the whole thing to see where the gap might be. You can do a Control Minus if you want to zoom it. I can see it's here. That's where the gap is. I'm on the right layer, so I'm just going to get pencil tool. It's already on the settings that I want, and I'm going to fill that gap. Oh, I'm drawing with yellow. Flip the colours back round. So I'm going to fill that gap. So I'm going to do Control Minus, test that it works. So I'm going to have to choose a different colour. Just pick this red, it's pink. So OK, and I'm going to click in this section. Hopefully it just fills in the controller. Yes, so we've closed the gap and we know that it's going to work. Once you're happy with your image, you need to go to File, Save as PSD to save in layers if you're unfinished. If you're finished, you can export as JPEG, and it will then become a flattened image. So I'll just show you. If I export it as a JPEG and say that I want it the highest quality possible and say save.